I mean, if we can't even get into the building, how are we going to get to the table? Period.
And I think we can end there. No, I'm kidding. But like, access denied, access denied, access denied. Hey y'all, it's your host Jessica Jordan, and I'm here on Access Denied, the podcast dedicated to helping you get over your fear of rejection, one episode at a time. Let's go! Hey y'all, and welcome back to Access Denied. We are on episode 4, which is very exciting. But what's more exciting is that today I am joined by Samantha Jade Duran of the iconic Instagram, A Disabled Icon. Both Samantha and I grew up as disabled children. And today's conversation, we talk in depth about what that experience looked like. From family expectations, to bullying in school, to the fabulous US healthcare system. We spill a lot of tea, y'all, and you are not going to want to miss this conversation. Let's dive in! Sam, welcome to Access Denied. Thank you so much for being here.
Of course, my horse. Thank you for inviting me.
Oh my gosh, I am so excited. We have mutually followed each other now for years probably, and we've like DM'd a little bit, but I am so excited to finally like have like a proper interaction. Like, you're so cool, and I'm just so excited to have you here.
You too, thank you.
Of course. For people that may be new to your page, can you talk a little bit about what you do, who you are, your story, all that? Nothing big, nothing major, just you.
So I'm just a girl with a lot of lore. Okay, no. So my name is Samantha Jade Duran, otherwise known as a disabled icon on social media. And as you may have deduced, I am a content creator and influencer. I was born with 2 genetic disabilities, Maffucci syndrome and Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. And I've been having countless surgeries since age of 6 as a result of the Maffucci syndrome. And, growing up, I didn't really have that representation, and I didn't really know any other person with a disability. So I felt really ashamed of having a disability growing up. I would hide it a lot. And, I created this account because I not only wanted to spread awareness, but I also wanted to be the adult that baby Sam needed when I was growing up. So, I create content surrounding disability awareness, disability rights, adaptive fashion, and adaptive sewing. I also make beauty content, and just a whole lot of slice of life and my little hobbies and stuff. So, yeah.
I love that. I love how representational your page is into you and your interests, because I think, correct me if you think otherwise, but within the disability community, sometimes it can feel very we're expected to just talk about disability all the time. And the thing is, we're so multifaceted. We have so many different interests, and it can be very pigeonholing in a lot of ways, I feel like.
Oh, 100%. Definitely. Being multifaceted comes with having a disability, because we just have to learn how to live our lives in so many different ways and find things that we can do and find enjoyable.
Absolutely. Talk to me about your background in fashion, because I feel like fashion is a really big thing for you with the sewing, and just in general, your fits are always so freaking fire.
Oh my God.
So how did you get into fashion? How did you first kind of realize that was something you were interested in?
So as I said, growing up, I had a lot of surgeries, which meant that I had a lot of scars, and not just any normal scars. They were really deep, because basically my right leg was significantly shorter than the left, which meant that they had to put this contraption on my right leg called an external fixator, which was like a halo with some rods that go in my leg out the other way type of thing. And then they would surgically fracture bones at certain parts, and every day my parents would turn these trinkets that would expand my bone little by little and correct my my limb length discrepancy and limb difference every day. So it was incredibly painful. And as you can imagine, every time it expanded my leg and lengthened it, it would create really intense scars. So I was unfortunately bullied a lot growing up as a result of having a disability and having these very visible scars that were not just visible, but they were visible even through things like pants, like tight pants or leggings and stuff like that. So I was deeply, deeply insecure, and I was deeply convinced that I was unlovable as a result of this. I mean, when you face so much hatred and you're othered so consistently because it's something entirely out of your control, you begin to internalize that hatred for yourself. So unfortunately, I was not as into fashion growing up, and this actually might surprise you. I was a tomboy growing up. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. And then when I was around like maybe 11, 12, 13 years old, I had an epiphany that if anyone wants to judge me because of my disability, they don't truly love me and they don't deserve to be in my life, because my disability is something that I'm always going to have. And it's something that's foundational to every aspect of my being, including my personality, including, yeah, just everything, even genetically, honey. So, that's when I really started experimenting with fashion. And I guess you could say I was one of those Tumblr girls. So I drew a lot of yeah, I drew a lot of inspiration from, Tumblr, including American Apparel and like vintage, vintage fashion from like the 60s. And I think that was the beginning of my fashionista lifestyle.
Love that trajectory of just sort of like kind of embracing this identity that you have within yourself and being like, you know what? I'm going to do this because it like makes me, it makes me happy. And I think in a lot of ways that speaks to kind of the theme of this podcast, which is about rejection. And one thing that consistently seems to come up in these interviews is the idea of self-rejection as well, and how finding like space to accept who you are and like the things that you care about and like letting them be visualized and externalized, I think is really, really cool. And fashion is a great way to do that. It's such a communicator of identity, but like for the outside world, and it's amazing.
Yeah, no, what's interesting is I feel like a lot of disabled people, especially with limb differences, I think they'll relate, where I used to hide my limb difference with my clothing. So when I started exploring my style and really discovering myself, I began to unmask that, and I started wearing skirts and shorts and dresses and things that showed off my limb difference. When you get to explore your style and make it your own, it kind of I would say it kind of distracts people from the fact that you have a disability and puts more emphasis on, your creativity and sense of style. And I think a lot of disabled people can relate to that personally.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's always more like whenever I dress for the nines, if you will, like it makes me feel great when I get complimented on my outfit for the day rather than a weird comment about,
right,
does it hurt or like what happened or whatever it may be. So for sure. One thing I know you embrace like your Hispanic Latina culture like so much. I would love to hear more about like the intersection between that and disability for you.
Yeah, the trauma. I mean, what's interesting is, well, the first thing I thought of was my mom. If you don't know, my mom passed away when I was 15, maybe like 4 days shy of my 16th birthday. And it was a little bit of a like nebulous, like complicated relationship. Because on one hand, she always encouraged me to love myself and advocate for myself, which I think is the reason why I'm such a big advocate. Um, but on the other hand, what's so interesting, I've noticed that like in Latino cultures, like I think they're very hush hush about anything related to disabilities or health. And like it wasn't until recently that I found out so many of my other relatives have their own, like hidden disabilities and just never spoke about it. Um, so while my mom was always like such an advocate and she would always encourage me to like not care what others thought, um, what's interesting is she would also make me hide my leg in pictures and like angle myself in a way where that would fit in and stuff. Yeah, I do take a lot of, in terms of fashion, I take a lot of inspiration from how colorful and vibrant and honestly maximalist a lot of like Latina cultures, how they are in like their heritage and like their fashion and stuff.
I have noticed that in like your style, like it is very maximalist in like this really unique way. I love the hats that you wear and your bags. Oh my God, your bags are iconic to your to your brand.
Thank you. Oh, wait, look at my snail.
Oh my God, stop it right now. That's so cute. Oh my God, I love it. I love the black and white of it. I'm a big black and white girly, so love it.
Truly.
It wouldn't be me. I mean, reputation, black and white, like it just
Hmm.
goes hand in hand.
Truly.
But I think that's a really interesting look into kind of what that intersection looks like. Just the fact that you mentioned that you have so many family members that have maybe more hidden disabilities who aren't necessarily forthcoming, but also that dichotomy between your mom being like, embrace yourself, love yourself, advocate for yourself, and then being like, okay, but also we're going to hide this in photos. Do you
Right.
think that's like had an impact on you growing up, like kind of dealing with the discourse around like both of those? Because those are two different conversations. I mean, those are two different like perspectives, right?
Yeah. I think it definitely had an impact on the way I viewed myself because I felt like I constantly had this internal grapple of loving myself and knowing that there was nothing wrong with me. But on another hand, also just constantly facing ableism at every turn of my life, everywhere I went, because of my obvious limb difference. Like I couldn't hide it in any capacity. Like I even had a limp, so it was like I couldn't even hide it with my clothes. You know what I mean? So yeah, I think I was always like a little conflicted about how I viewed myself growing up.
I'm sorry, like that was your experience, because like I know I can relate in the sense my mom used to make me stand for photos, and I love my mom. That's not to say anything bad about her, like or anything, but that was just what it was. Like she'd be like, "Get out of the
Right.
chair," I'd be like,
Right. No, I
"Cool."
feel you. You used a wheelchair growing up too?
I did use a wheelchair growing up. Um,
Hmm.
I, well, short version of my story, I did have a prosthetic for a couple of years in my early childhood into my early school years. And then I think at the age of 10, I went full wheelchair user mode and took the prosthetic off for a good decade. And she's back
Oh,
now. So,
character development.
character development.
It was a little opposite for me. I think I was using a wheelchair on and off throughout my childhood, like maybe between like 6 and 10. And honestly, before that too, probably like to go to Disney or whatever. And then when I was 14, I had my last leg lengthening surgery, I think. And after that, my mom would just kind of like force me to walk everywhere.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And I would suffer all the time. It was so bad. Like, and I would have all these fractures and like still force me to walk. And then it wasn't until I went to college where I was like, dude, I cannot keep doing this anymore. Because unfortunately, Mapuche syndrome and the EDS are both progressive and degenerative. So I'm just gonna keep being more disabled every year. So when I got to college, the University of Miami, it was just so vast and so really like I could not. I couldn't walk all that. Like that was just so demonic. And I would honestly just cry every time I got to class. It was just too much on my body. That's when I put the request in for the manual wheelchair with my oncologist. So I was like, something needs to give. I can't keep going to school walking. So yeah, and that's when I really started to use a wheelchair pretty much the majority of the time, you know.
I cannot imagine walking around a college campus. And I know we have different disabilities, but in the same sense, like it's similar in the sense like that it's uncomfortable to walk long distances.
For real.
It's the worst. And actually that's something I want to ask you about now, because I know I've watched a video of yours in preparation for this where you were talking about like every time that you go outside and like you're like, I'm gonna walk today, you like regret it, like
For real.
I don't know, 5 minutes later or whatever. And I'm just like, I feel that so freaking hard. The amount of times where I'm like, I've chosen to put the prosthetic on and I'm like, why did I do this? Why did I succumb my body to this today?
Truly.
And like, I don't know, when you make that decision to like walk, what's going through your brain at that time, like versus using the chair?
Truly. Well, maybe sometimes I'm like, well, I don't have any like ankle sprains at the moment. That's like the main thing I deal with, honestly. One of the main things I deal with too, the chronic ankle instability and sprains due to the EDS. So a lot of times if I use a wheelchair, it's because I for real cannot walk without aggravating my ankles more. But partially that's part of the reason why. So maybe like, for example, maybe I won't have an ankle sprain that day or like recovering from one. And I'll be like, and maybe I'll have like a lower pain that day miraculously. And I'll be like, you know what? This is a short enough thing. Like maybe it's just like going into CVS and getting like, I don't know, like a candy and coming back to my car. Maybe I could just raw dog it and go in my cane. No. And also like sometimes I'm like, maybe my legs need a little bit more like exercise. Maybe that would be good for my muscles, you know?
No.
Never is. And I usually end up like causing an injury or, you know, definitely always having more pain. I actually did that recently. Where did I go? Oh yeah, I went to my doctor's office. I went to my doctor's office in my cane because I didn't have time to put my rollator in my car. It's ultra lightweight, so luckily I could do that by myself. But I was running late and I was like, oh God, well luckily like they have a lot of chairs there, so maybe I'll be okay and just go in my cane. No. I went up to the desk and she's immediately started asking me like a million questions and I'm like, I cannot be standing here any longer.
Do you feel comfortable like being able to ask like for help in those scenarios when it kind of comes to the point where like you have to sit down or you need to like stop walking? Do you feel like, have you gotten to a point in your own self-love journey where you feel confident asking for help?
Yeah, what's interesting is my mom always encouraged me, my mom and my what is it called? Sorry, the brain fog. My mom and my pediatric orthopedic surgeon, they would always encourage me to, you know, be unapologetic, so to speak, about my needs and the accommodations I require as a disabled person. So I didn't really ever feel like I had to withhold asking for help or like needing people to understand that I'm gonna need to sit down or, you know, need certain accommodations. But I have felt like like a burden at times. Yeah.
I think that's something, unfortunately, that a lot of disabled people relate to. I know I do. Even to this day, I mean, you and I both show up on the internet every day in brightly colored outfits and flaunt around and are like, yes, we love ourselves and we're so proud. And I think feeling burdensome is always just going to be like part of the disabled experience, unfortunately. But I think you bring up something really interesting there with your pediatric surgeon, I think is what you called him. Because having also been to a lot of doctors in childhood, you know, sometimes there's a lot of rejection in healthcare for disabled children not being believed, and kind of being made to feel like, oh, well, their pain's not as bad as it actually is, or
Yeah.
all of these different things. So I don't know, what was your experience like? Mostly positive, mostly not positive?
I think I got lucky. My experience was mostly positive, I feel. But again, I was misdiagnosed, so I don't know. My doctors were really encouraging and really supportive growing up, and they would try to incorporate me as much as possible into the decision making so that I felt like I had some level of autonomy. But yeah, I was misdiagnosed for starters, with another rare bone disease, but more common, called fibrous dysplasia. Um, and also I wouldn't get pain management aside from like whenever I had surgeries, which was pretty often, but girl, like the pain has always been pretty bad. So yeah.
If you don't feel comfortable talking about it, that's so fine. But what are the differences between like the thing you were misdiagnosed with versus what you have now, and how did they kind of bridge that gap? Like, did you have to advocate for yourself? Did your family have to advocate for you to kind of get the proper diagnosis? Like, what was that process like?
Yeah, so okay, what's interesting, it's quite a bit of a story, but basically when I was a year old, like a year and a half old, I wasn't crawling, let alone walking. And so my parents took me to Venezuela, where like a doctor took some x-rays and he was like, oh, yeah, your daughter has Alzheimer's disease, which is like the first phase, so to speak, of Maffucci syndrome. Basically, it's the bone tumors without the vein tumors. Like you have the bone tumors, not the vein tumors. That's the only difference. And I guess at the time it was a correct diagnosis because I didn't have the vein tumors yet, or at least they weren't like apparent. Um, and then when they took me back to the United States for a second opinion, they were immediately like, no, she has fibrous dysplasia, which are like cartilage-based bone lesions, which is so interesting because the type of bone tumors that I have are cartilage-based bone tumors called enchondromas. So again, I don't understand how I went through 18 years without them realizing that it wasn't Maffucci syndrome, but maybe it has to do something with cartilage being in my bones, and that's why they didn't realize it. But when I was around like 6 or 7 or something, I started growing the hemangiomas. I don't know if you could see that, like right there. I started growing the hemangiomas, aka vein tumors, and they were pretty big at the time too. So they were pretty noticeable, and we would go from doctor to doctor to doctor trying to figure out what it was. No one knew what these vein tumors were. Like no one could even put a name to it, and I would get them removed. Like I remember I went to a dermatologist once, and she literally burned them off like a wart. The demonry, yeah, crazy, yeah.
I'm sorry. That's
Yeah,
awful.
I know. Yeah, it was wild to say the least. And of course, it grew back because that's not how you treat tumors. And then eventually I started getting like I saw several plastic surgeons. And I eventually found one that I felt comfortable with. My mom, of course, she always incorporated me in like my medical decisions, and she let me choose a doctor. It's like if I didn't like a doctor, if they were ableist, I would be like, no, we're going to another doctor. So basically, I would see these plastic surgeons to find one that would be comfortable operating on my hands to take out these vein bumps that at the time I didn't know were tumors. And I remember there was this male plastic surgeon who I saw, and I told him that I wanted to be like a disabled model. Yeah, I told him I wanted to be a disabled model, and basically to be the representation that I wanted to see, you know what I mean? And he was like, oh, that'll never happen. Disabled people can't be models.
Oh, sir.
Um,
Oh,
mind you,
sir.
not to be mean, but he wasn't the best looking. So I don't know who was talking to me. TF? I don't know who he thinks he is. So then I told him off in my appointment. And this is before I knew ableism had a word. Like I knew that what he was saying and doing was wrong. I told him off. And then I left like furious with my mom. And I like told her like on the way to the car, I was like, I don't know why he thinks that disabled people can't be models. Like it's people like him that are making life harder for people like me. Like I deserve to be seen. There's nothing shameful about having a disability. And I like, yeah. And I was like, we're going to another doctor, period. Yeah. So then eventually, yeah, I saw another plastic surgeon and she took out the vein tumors. Again, didn't know what they were, but whatever. I just kept getting those surgeries. And then, unfortunately, my mom died before they figured out that it was G syndrome. And she was like she was like my main caregiver. So my dad worked so much. He was a business owner. So so when she passed away, I just like stopped going to the doctors, which was wild considering my history. And I didn't go for like 4 years or something like that. Yeah. So then when I was 18, I started having a lot of pain in my left leg, which was my good leg, otherwise known as like my lucky bin. Yeah. And then I was having a lot of pain there, which was weird. And with fibrous dysplasia, you also get a lot of like pathological fractures. So I was like, maybe I have a fracture, and I don't know. So my dad made an appointment with my surgeon, my pediatric orthopedic surgeon. It turns out that he moved hospitals in that time frame, and someone that he trained replaced him, and he really looked like a younger, like, clone of him. It was so weird. But I guess he was more knowledgeable because I think he clocked the Mofuchi on site. So basically, I explained the issue with my left leg and that I was having a lot of pain, and then he was like, okay, let's get some x-rays. And I was like, wait, right, when he was about to leave, I was like, wait, I also have these weird bumps on my hands and no one can figure out what they are. He was like, okay, let's just get the x-rays and see. And I was like, okay. And then, so I got the x-rays, and mind you, that's usually very quick, but, yeah, so it was like maybe like 5 minutes of x-rays, came back, and they usually come back immediately. They're like, okay, you're good to go back. Or, you need an MRI, like, fine. But this man took like 2 hours. He took like 2 hours, and I was waiting in that room for 2 hours, and I don't know, I think I was always like a little bit of a nerd. Hella of a nerd. Because I would always read like the NIH, I would read all these like medical journals about fibrous dysplasia. I just like being informed about my disability, even at a young age. Like people would tell me that I should be like a doctor or like researcher or something. But and I knew that there was a slim chance that fibrous dysplasia can cause bone cancer. So when he was taking that long, even at 18, I kind of was like, he's gonna tell me I have cancer. So he came back, and yeah, of course, that's what he told me. He was like, hey, so pretty sure you have bone cancer. Also, I'm pretty sure you have this thing called Mafuchi syndrome, otherwise known as multiple enchondromatosis and multiple hemangiomatosis. And I can't see you as a doctor anymore. Like, you have to go to a special, like, oncologist or whatever and get the surgery and whatever. And yeah, so then, long story short, basically like 6 months had passed before I was able to get the surgery. I got the surgery, and they confirmed that it was in fact Mafuchi syndrome the whole time, based on biopsies that they did. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I'm sorry that it took so long for you to get an answer, because like that's a ridiculous amount of time, right? Like,
Yeah.
your whole childhood, essentially. You just were mistreating the wrong things, and that's very frustrating. I will say one part of your story that really resonates with me and I think is so great, and I want to flag it because it's so amazing when parents allow their children to have a voice and to advocate for themselves. The fact that your mom let you like go to these different like surgeons and different doctors and choose the one that you were comfortable with is amazing. And I think that speaks to her as a parent, and I love that for you. I love that that was your experience.
Yeah. I'm glad I was able to do that too, because imagine how uncomfortable I would have felt and how powerless I would have felt as a child. Children, unfortunately, don't have a voice more often than not. So, and especially like being disabled, I don't get to choose oftentimes like how I feel and things that I go through, but at least I was able to make a choice. My mom helped me be able to make a choice that I would feel more comfortable with.
Absolutely. And I think that is so important to be able to have those like real conversations and make decisions that are important to you. And it gives you as well, I'm sure that in and of itself has helped in your advocacy later on in life too, because it gave you the foundation to be able to be like, well, no, this doesn't work for me. And I would imagine that that would carry over into other areas beyond healthcare as well, like in terms of like picking friends who are actually like compatible with you, relationships, like so many different aspects.
Yeah, definitely. I think just that one small detail of my mom giving me, some autonomy as a disabled child definitely helped me realize that I have a voice that matters and the choices I make can be powerful. Yeah.
Getting away from healthcare for a second, let's briefly discuss childhood, because you mentioned early on in our little time here together today about bullying and about kind of that being like something you experienced with your scars and your situation. So I would just love to kind of unpack that a little bit and how that has affected you as an adult, and in turn, like what you've learned from that experience, I guess.
Experiencing so much bullying for something entirely out of my control was completely uncalled for, and it's very telling of how so many adults raise their children. Hatred is definitely learned. So, as I said, I internalized a lot of the hatred that came from bullying, and eventually I realized that, people who feel the need to pick on others and tear them down and call them names, are often insecure themselves, and they're just projecting their innermost insecurities. Because even as an adult now, I've noticed that it makes people deeply uncomfortable to see a disabled person loving themselves. There's nothing more threatening to people than seeing someone so like unapologetically like embracing the parts of themselves that they themselves have been taught to reject.
I was actually kind of hoping that that would be like a trajectory that we would get to, just because I see the way that we both like project our content online, and I see the comments that we both receive, and like the people that just decide to hate us because we like ourselves.
Literally.
And I think there's a lot that can be said for that. Like, we're both women and female presenting. I think that in general, like men in particular, do not like when a woman likes herself.
Literally. Yeah.
It's like, no. Simply no.
Right.
But
it's giving
add on the
jealousy.
disability. Oh, it's giving jealousy. It's giving you don't like yourself. It's giving you know that you are the worst, the woe. Hate it.
Truly. Men hating us because we're powerful bees.
Period.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm just like, why are you here? Why do people seek out ways to like spread hate into the world? I don't know, because I feel like you don't have to be on our pages, but they are always.
Really, it's strange behavior. It is strange behavior,
and it is not my favorite part about being a creator at all, which is something we haven't discussed yet at all, is like kind of your turn into content creation. And like, I know you talked about at the very beginning, like wanting to be the representation and like spread awareness and all of that. But like when you first started like filming your content, like tell me about that story. Like, when did you start? How did you start? What was your first like initial experiences like? Yeah.
Okay, so actually I was talking about this yesterday with one of my best friends, but I started making content like in 2018.
Wow.
I posted like maybe like one or two YouTube videos actually about disability. And I think I was just so I just don't think I had the life experience enough to know how to really get my content to pick up and get people interested in it, you know?
Yeah.
So I kind of just let it fall off. And then I like 3 years ago, November 2021, I started making content. Kind of just as a hobby. I was bored, and I around this time I was really involved in like the local political scene, and I was, very involved in like disability advocacy IRL. So I was like, you know what? You know what this world needs? It needs disability awareness, because too many people are unfortunately, very uneducated about anything related to not just disability, but also the rights of disabled people and inaccessibility and stuff. So I started making content as an avenue of spreading awareness and also spreading disability pride and showing people that being young, disabled, and iconic aren't mutually exclusive, period. So,
Period.
um, so that's how I began. And then I think almost immediately, like a month later, I had my first video go viral where I was in a Target shopping cart, like one of those like electric carts, and I was looking like cute in like a red color coordinated outfit with my heels and like my cane on the cart. And you saw me like what I could send it to you eventually. You'll be able to see it eventually. Sorry. And the text said something like, um, I think it was something about like being young and disabled, and that being okay, and being able to, like, we stole me cards, just, being young doesn't negate that. So I'm that, of course, came with a lot of backlash because people cannot fathom anything about disability because there's just no education out there. Um, and it was a little jarring seeing how hateful people are, how misguided and ignorant they are. And they like swear they're being allies, but they're not. But I knew I needed to continue because it's just, I'm tired of living with so much hatred everywhere I go and so much like ignorance. So I just continued to make content. And yeah, the rest was history.
Rest is history. I love it. I think that is a very relatable story for a lot of people, just kind of like starting and things taking off, and now here we are, and I love it. And I think also the aspect of the awareness is so key in what you do, and what so many disability content creators do in general, because if you don't agree with this, let me know. We can have a discussion. But I truly think that a lot of the hatred comes out of a place of ignorance. It just comes from a lack of awareness and a lack of understanding, because for so long, disabled people have been hidden away. And we've been just kind of shoved to the edges of society, and us claiming the space, people are like, whoa,
Right.
And it's
Right.
so
Hint, the ugly laws of the 1970s. I think a lot of the hatred and ignorance that we see is a direct result of the ugly laws, the remnants of the ugly laws. Because had we not been hidden, had inaccessibility still not be so rampant, I think people are just not used to seeing disabled people here in the United States, that it's almost like an impulse to attack something they don't understand. And I'm not justifying it.
No, this is not justification.
Yeah, yeah, of course.
Ignorance is an explanation. It's not a justification.
Right.
But I do think the ugly laws going as long as they did, and then the ADA, I don't know if you've experienced this, but I definitely have. People look at the ADA as like an economic barrier more so than like a like important document for people's rights.
Yeah, you mean like non-disabled people?
Yeah. Non-disabled
Yeah,
people are like, oh,
totally.
well, we have to put in a ramp. Like, that's going to cost my small business so much money. And
Little do
missing the
they
point.
know. Yeah, little do
Right.
they know there's countless grants. Little do they know that if the world was more accessible, more disabled people would be able to work. And yes, there would still be disabled people that can't work or have to work reduced hours. But I mean, if we can't even get into the building, how are we going to get to the table? Period.
And I think we can end there. No, I'm kidding. But like, that is the sentence, right? If we can't even get there, then how are we going to have the ability to spend our money in the store? How are we going to have the ability to work in the store? How are we going to have the ability to show up and make our presence known so that we can
be normalized?
Be normalized and have people be more aware so they're less ignorant and less hateful. It all is this cycle of hideousness, really. Like, it's so bad.
Yeah, it's a vicious cycle. And I'm telling you firsthand, I went to Spain, Barcelona recently. And when I was researching where to go as a wheelchair user, like internationally, that was like one of the top places that were deemed most accessible for wheelchair users. And going there, I'm not saying it's perfect, but I was flabbergasted by the amount of wheelchair users that were traveling there independently without anyone. Yeah. And not just that, by the levels of accessibility that I didn't even think were possible in the, like, anywhere. Like, honestly, it's so much of the propaganda, like US propaganda being like, oh, we're the best. No, we're not the best, actually. No, I went to Spain and a lot of disabled people were able to do things independently and live their own lives and lead fulfilling lives. And it's because of the accessibility that they were able to like integrate themselves into society and live fully. And what's interesting is I started doing research. Apparently, they have their own version of the ADA. And around 14 years ago, they passed a Complementary Act to the ADA to actually federally enforce their version of the ADA and socially integrate disabled people into society. And this is why Barcelona is the way it is. I'm not saying it's perfect. I've heard that other areas of Spain aren't as accessible as Barcelona. But when I tell you, like, you know, like, have you been to like older cities in the United States that are like, they have a lot of cobblestone and you're like, dude, what the hell? How am I going to get anywhere? Well, there are some areas of Barcelona that had those level of like really chunky cobblestones. And honestly, I didn't even think about this. And when I saw it, I was like, why can't the US do this? The US could never. That's what I kept thinking. They had a little section through the cobblestone that was like concrete, straight concrete, no cracks, nothing. That had a sign, like one of the disability sign on it. And it was specifically for disabled people so that they wouldn't have to go through the cobblestone.
Wow.
The US could never. No, and then, yeah, so this was on the way to the beach. I got to the beach. They had ramps going all the way down to the water. Yeah, the US could never. Here, it's funded by, like, nonprofits. Then, they had, like, 2, like, covered canopies at the beach for, like, wheelchair users and mobility aid users and shit. And, yeah, and this was funded by the government, and there were employees working at the beach, federally funded, jobs. These employees assisted disabled people who went to the beach, who go to the beach. And then they had like a huge wheelchair accessible bathroom that had like a Hoyer lift, people that can't transfer independently and need to use a bathroom. What kind of bathrooms? I've never seen that, not even in a hospital here.
No.
You know what I mean? And they even had like the beach chair that takes someone directly into the water. It was like, I was flabbergasted. Like the whole time I was like, the US could never. Like, and this is why you see so many like wheelchair users and disabled people traveling independently in Barcelona. It's because these things are naturally, these levels of accessibility are naturally integrated in their culture in a way that allows disabled people to lead fulfilling independent lives if they wish to, if they can. So, yeah.
That is amazing. I actually have been to Barcelona and I don't remember a lot of these things, but I was in a tour group when I was there. It was a very weird experience and very much like old churches, that sort of vibe, which are just naturally not going to be as accessible.
Right.
But that was another lifetime ago. But I love that that was your experience, because Europe, I feel like, always gets this rap of like not being very accessible. So that's
Right.
pretty awesome. But to your point that the U.S. could never, I will say this, and it does give me hope, and maybe I have too much hope for it, but I've heard that the Harris campaign has a disability advisor, the first presidential nominee to ever have one.
Ever?
I'm pretty positive that that was what I was told. I just attended the Democratic National Convention, so I'm pretty sure that's what I heard while I was there. I was like, what?
Wow.
That's
Honestly,
huge.
yeah. That's huge. Huge.
Huge.
A
Because I
seat
think
at
a
the
lot of
table.
people, a seat at the table, and I think a lot of people think that because we have the ADA, all of the disability problems of the U.S. are fixed. They're like, oh, well, they have this one document, check, done. The disability problem is done. And that's just so naive to think. And having this advisor, I don't know what they'll be able to do in the course of 4 years' time, but it is a step in the right direction.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I mean, I haven't spoken about it publicly, but I am currently in the process of reaching out to certain key people because I want to kickstart the next disability rights movement in the US so that we can pass a complementary act to the ADA to actually make it federally enforceable through a federal agency like any other law is, you know?
Absolutely.
That's like having taxes here without the IRS. Okay. Like, so it's just like bizarre expecting disabled people to file lawsuit after lawsuit with every instance of accessibility that we come across, which is countless a day. And then not only that, but also basically a lot of people are on disability benefits, which have asset limits. And then when you sue someone and get money from a lawsuit that counts against your asset limits, and then we wonder why the United States is so inaccessible. It needs to be federally enforced. There needs to be an agency overseeing all of this.
The fact that there's not is like astounding to me, right? There's also so many loopholes too, and I think that's the other issue that I really take, because okay, well, jobs have to hire disabled people. It can't not, but the loophole is as long as like the reasonable accommodations aren't too much. What does that mean? Like that is open for interpretation. It needs stricter language than that. It
100%.
needs some sort of guidance, because that just leaves it open-ended where we can just ignore that. Same with housing, like housing rules. It's too vague. It's too vague. That's the word that I'm looking for.
It's too vague and open to interpretation to people who are healthcare professionals who don't know what's best for us. And not only that, but it just reinforces the notion that disabled people are burdens. We're not, period. We're not. If we had the appropriate accessibility, if we had the appropriate accommodations, so many more disabled people would be able to not only get out of their house. In fact, I follow someone who had to be carried in her power wheelchair upstairs to her apartment because the elevator never was working. And she was trapped in her apartment for months on end because of this. But we would also be able to work if we wanted to.
100%. 100%. I do not understand why this is so difficult for like the majority of people to understand, but we understand.
No, for real. No, me either. It's just mind-blowing. Accessibility benefits everyone. The curb-cut effect.
It literally benefits everyone. It benefits everyone. And like, I always say this. I know in our community we're always like, oh, you can become disabled at any time without warning, whatever. Like if you live long enough, you'll become disabled. That's all true. But I think it's also important to discuss like temporary disability, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
Technically, getting the flu for a week is a temporary disability. Breaking your arm, breaking your leg, like there are temporary disabilities. And when people have those happen too, that's like their first taste of it oftentimes, right? Is like, oh, I can't perform in the same way that I'm used to, and now I have to adapt myself. And they're just like, okay, because they're like, oh, eventually it'll get better. But that's your moment to be able to empathize and understand, is be like, oh, well, okay, maybe we do need to take it seriously, because when this happens to me again, and maybe perhaps happens more permanently, wouldn't it be so nice if I didn't have to like adapt again?
Right. Oh my God. I'm laughing because my doctor, my oncologist, my Mafuchi doctor, okay, he recently had surgery for like a chronic ankle fracture that he's had apparently, and he just never told me. We're kind of close, but whatever. And when I had my last appointment, he came in like one of those like knee scooter things, and I was like, oh my God, you're disabled now too? And he laughed, and he was like, oh my God, I don't know how you do it, Sam. Like, because he said he would always look at these ramps and think it was like the pinnacle of accessibility. But now that he has to use a mobility aid, he sees how much effort is required from using a mobility aid and being disabled. And he said that all these things he's starting to notice more and more as he's temporarily disabled, where like he's in the scooter, he goes to press a button that opens a door. The door doesn't open because the button's broken, and then being pissed off, and then struggling even more. And by the time he gets to the office, he's exhausted, which I found interesting because, he's a doctor. He deals with bone cancer patients all day. A lot of us have to use mobility aids. And, as much as he's always been a great doctor, he's always been extremely empathetic. Him experiencing it firsthand opened his eyes up to inaccessibility way more than empathizing could.
Yeah, 100%. I had a teacher in high school. He, I believe, broke his leg a couple years back, and his daughter reached out to me and was like, my dad keeps like saying like how he never realized how difficult it was for you to navigate getting around the high school, like opening doors and the hallways when they're crowded, until suddenly he's using a wheelchair, and he just wanted me to reach out and let you know like that he's now experiencing that too. And I'm like, yep.
Being disabled is not the lazy route. Using a mobility aid is not the lazy route. I can assure you that.
No, it's not lazy. It's literally bare minimum essential. Like, it's so much work too. There's so much work. So much work. Even with, so I use like an electric wheelchair more so than a manual, like 95% of the time. But even that, like the amount of things that have to like go into that thought process as well, because it's heavier, it's not as transportable, charging it, remembering to charge it every night. I know, like, obviously that doesn't compare in the sense of like having to wheel yourself up a hill, but it does just in the sense of like, it's always something on the mind. It's always something we have to think about. Yeah. No, also, girl, I use a power wheelchair too sometimes. Sometimes it can't handle certain like angles, like certain like hills and stuff. And I'm like, am I going to fall backwards right now? Is this thing going to charge while I'm out? Like, die when I'm out? Like, what? Am I going to be okay? Like, will I be able to get home? Wait, quick little story time from when I went to Lollapalooza a couple weeks ago. Oh yeah, that's right. There was this huge crowd moment, and I was trying to go up the hill following the crowd, and my chair dead ass tipped backwards. Oh my God. 100%. And I don't know where this hulk of a man came from, but he came and grabbed my chair and like right at the right time. I don't know how we did it, but like he was there and then he was gone. Never spoke to him again. But I was like, thank you, sir. You saved my life. Thanks to him and Natasha. Shout out Natasha. Like I would have for sure been down. That's hilarious. And also like really, what's the word? God, the brain fog ladies. Really convenient. Convenient, yeah. We love to see it. It's really, we love our allies, ladies. We love our allies. Okay, well, I want to be mindful of time because we've already been speaking for like an hour, which is wild. But I do have a couple like fast round questions that I try to ask everybody. So, number one, when you're feeling like unmotivated or down or like after going through ableism or whatever, what is a song that you can always put on and it will always like make you feel a little bit better?
Song. Well, I think lately I've been getting into like bossa nova. So random, I know, but like, I've been listening. A song that I put on to feel better, is like Agua de Beber by Astrud Gil Gilberto. It's just like so cute. It's like, you know.
Yeah, Latin music has so much like fun vibes too, so I totally get that. What is something that is in what I'm calling your rejection rescue toolkit? So, how you kind of like treat yourself after dealing with something where a situation where you were told no or told access denied, whatever it may be.
Maybe I put on a little bit of music. If I don't have my makeup done, maybe do my makeup. I always have on a cute outfit, so that's covered, ladies. And maybe FaceTiming one of my best friends.
I like it.
Mhm.
I feel the FaceTiming a friend thing. Like I am always yapping to somebody, so I love
Truly
that.
certified yapper.
Certified
Guilty.
yapper. You're on my close friend story too, so you know all the shenanigans that go down.
Truly.
So I'm like, I'm always gotta be deciphering with someone.
Truly. I feel you.
That's so funny. What was the last thing that you did scared?
Oh, it's actually something I did yesterday. So I've been like struggling a lot with imposter syndrome lately. I've always been into makeup and stuff like that. And I make beauty content, but unlike most successful beauty creators, that's like their only niche. So then there's me, the pinnacle of not fitting into like the beauty standard traditionally, especially like having a disability, and people always think that's like not attractive, which like watch yourself. Right. And for the longest time I've been wanting to apply to the Sephora squad, and they finally opened their applications, and I was like, I don't know, I don't think they'll select me, even though like, I have like a solid audience and they're like engaged and stuff, but like it's not the only content. Like beauty is not the only content I make. Like unlike most creators. So I was like, I don't know if that worked. I was just having like imposter syndrome. But a few people messaged me about it, asking me why I haven't applied yet and like why I haven't posted it. And they were like, you need to do it. Like, we need that disability representation. I was like, you're right. So I applied yesterday. I posted on my story, and I have over 200 testimonials so far. I'm kind of shook. Yeah.
Look at you.
Yeah. I was shookums. I was like, wow, that's a lot of people.
Congratulations. That's honestly, I think that's a testimonial to how iconic you are and how much like
Wow.
you're out here doing exactly what you wanted to do. Like keep that in mind. I think that, I mean, not that you need me to sit here and tell you that, but like you're the representation. You're out here spreading awareness and doing cool shit. Like that's exactly what the disability community needs, and you're doing it iconically.
Thank you. You too.
Oh, thank you.
Thank
Final little question for you. What advice would you give to people who are maybe not feeling their most iconic selves right now?
Well, something I do to cheer myself up even when I'm like bedbound. Like even when I'm recovering from surgeries and I legit can't even stand without assistance or sit up without assistance, I will find a way to put on some like lipstick or lip stain to just like, perk myself up a little bit. I don't do it for others. I do it for myself because truly like that doing something for yourself, even if it's putting on a little bit of lipstick, putting on a little bit of mascara, maybe putting on a cute outfit, even if it's just to deteriorate in bed, literally me in bed right now, like, hello. I think it can really boost your confidence and morale, and you might not notice it right away, but it can change the way you feel about yourself long term.
Absolutely. I love that. I always say, if you see me in red lipstick, it's for me. It's not for anybody else.
Period. Yeah.
100%.
Right.
I mean, like, just a brief little thought on the male gaze, but men don't tend to like red lipstick. They think it's like too much, whatever. And
True.
women also get really jealous when they see somebody like rocking a red lip. So I'm like, if I wear a red lip, it's for me. It's for me. So I relate to that.
Exactly. What lipstick do you use, by the way? Because honestly, your red lip look goes so hard.
Thank you. So I have two that I use. I prefer the formula of the Maybelline liquid ink matte.
Oh yeah,
whatever.
That's what I used to use too. It's so good.
It's so good, but I like the color better of my Stila one. But it smears, so I can't.
Oh yeah.
It depends on what I'm doing.
Right.
Yeah.
See you. Real see real.
Always keeping the tea fresh around here. It's fine.
Truly. No, the transfer proof lipstick is essential. The Maybelline one.
Oh,
it's
yeah.
so good, but it's so dry. Low key.
It is 100%. Like, I always have to put like some sort of chapstick on underneath of it, and then I like to put a gloss on top a lot of the time too. It helps a bit, but it is really drying.
Yeah, like if it's winter, girl, I cannot wear that. I've noticed every time it's winter and I wear it, cracked immediately.
Well, I'll send you the proper name. I can't think of the Stila one that I use because I haven't been using it lately. I've been using the other one. But I'll send it to you so you can see it. The color is phenomenal. Everybody that I like have let use it, and I'm like, oh my god, this color just looks so good on every skin type. And I'm like, I know. It's a great shade. Sam, thank you so much for being here. Where can people find you? Where can people follow you?
Well, my username is a disabled icon on all platforms. And yeah, my biggest and most used platform, my platform of preference is definitely Instagram. I'm pretty sure the TikTok ban is definitely going to happen. They haven't even sold it yet, so I don't post there. And yeah.
I love it. Thank you so much for being here. Everybody go follow Sam and check out her iconic outfits, her iconic videos, her iconic advocacy. She's killing it out here. It's an actual honor to like know you and like get to like, I don't know, be virtual friends with you. Hopefully we can meet in person one day. That would be super, super cool.
Oh, thank you. It's honestly like you're so cool and the work that you do is so amazing. And I'm truly so proud of all of your accomplishments and achievements. And for starting this podcast, I know it's a lot of work and like really hard, but like you're doing it. You did it, Joe.
An incredible reference. Oh my god. Oh, thank you so much for saying that, though. You're such a sweetheart, and I cannot wait for people to hear this episode. It's going to be so good. Thank you so much for being here, and I'll see you all soon.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you guys so much for tuning into this week's episode of Access Denied. New episodes launch every Tuesday, so I hope that you will subscribe, download, whatever you do to make sure you're here every single week. We have so many incredible guests coming on, and I want to say a huge shout out to JP Warner Sound for dropping this sick beat that you're listening to right now. Thanks to everybody who made Access Denied possible, and I will see you next time. Bye!